What is my name? As far as my followers are concerned, I have none. I am simply a teacher, though I am called the teacher of righteousness. I lead a troupe of celibate renunciates, who have withdrawn from society to make a way in the desert for the anointed one to come. We devote ourselves to divine law and to an austere lifestyle. We have built a small but thriving community, about 200 strong, on the northwest corner of the Great Salt Sea, where we engage in copying and studying our sacred scrolls. We cultivate the healing arts, and we are particularly devoted to observing the Sabbath with all stringency and to ritual purity. But of course, we did not arrive on the stage of history spontaneously. Our story is long and complex, and an open book for those with understanding.
But a little history is in order. We need to understand the events of the 2nd century BCE, when a group of Judean freedom fighters called the Maccabees rose up against their foreign overlords, the Seleucid dynasty of ancient Syria, and brought about at least a semblance of an independent Jewish land. The Maccabees were from a priestly family, the house of Hashmon, also known as Hasmoneans, which means they weren't from the one family who were allowed to be high priests, the house of Tzadok, or the Zadokites. But as far as the Essenes sect, the writers of the Dead Sea Scrolls, who we can also call Enochians, were concerned, neither Zadokites nor Hasmoneans were fit to rule the temple. And early on in their development, they expressed very strong opinions that the whole Zadokite priesthood was corrupt.
We must return to the period of the Maccabean revolt, which fundamentally changed the character of our nation and who would oversee the Second Jewish Temple. Although the Maccabees prevailed, ejecting the Syrian Seleucid oppressors from Jerusalem and rededicating the temple, there was still no proper priesthood. Eventually, a new priestly family, the House of the Hasmoneans, of the family of the Maccabees, rose to power over both temple and land. Many of our thoughts and ideas, opposing these developments, spread among the people. They are reflected in the book of Daniel, which opposes the corrupt Zadokite priesthood and speaks of a final era of degeneration of history across 70 prophetic weeks and 4 evil kingdoms.
The Essenes were right in thinking that the biblical prophet Daniel, who had much to say about apocalyptic events at the end of time, was, at least to some extent, in their corner, since the book can be seen as condemning the corruption of the Zadokite priesthood. However, the book of Daniel also departs from the Enochic doctrine of evil, which referenced a group of rebellious angels who descended to earth and cohabited with human women, spawning a race of giants. These angels had free will and chose to leave their heavenly abode. But if the world is careening toward destruction, then there's not much room for free will.
But we Zadokites also find solace in the book of Daniel, which defends the Torah of Moses and the sanctity of the Second Temple. Angels feature prominently in this book, but they are not depicted as rebellious or in opposition to the deity. The book depicts various kingdoms and their angelic counterparts, but they are shown to be instruments of divine punishment, commissioned as it were by holy decree. It condemns the profanation of the Zadokite temple and proclaims its restoration before the end of days. As for our fate, the last of the Oniad priests of Zadokite lineage, myself included, fled to Egypt and built a Jewish temple at Leontopolis. That, unfortunately, allowed the Essene Enochians a complete victory over us, at least for the time being.
How then do we understand the book of Daniel? It seems to contain both Essene Enochian and Zadokite perspectives. Whoever wrote it, either Daniel himself or somebody else writing in Daniel's name, it appears to have arisen out of an apocalyptic circle that attempted to subordinate the principles and ideas of the Enochians into a revised form of Judaism in which the central doctrine of covenant absent in the books of Enoch, including the dream visions and the animal apocalypse, remained an important ingredient.
The Essene Enochians appeared to have the upper hand after the Zadokites lost their power to the Hasmoneans, the sons of Mattathias, also called the Maccabees. The Essenes tried, but failed to replace the Zadokite leadership. But the Hasmoneans succeeded in dethroning the Zadokites as leaders of the people and the temple. The new Hasmonean leadership might have stepped aside, allowing the Essenes to take their place in the high priesthood. But they decided to rule as high priests themselves. In their eyes, they were not the usurpers. The Essenes were. Most of the Zadokites fled to Egypt in those days, but some, including me, joined the Essene Enochian ranks. I subsequently became a leader of the movement. And since I was identified as the driving force behind the move to oust the Hasmoneans, they persecuted me bitterly.
At some point, it appears that a group of Zadokites, presumably including the fabled teacher of righteousness, managed to take over the Essene Enochic tradition. That's because, with the death of their great high priest, Onias III, they realized it was all over for the Zadokite priesthood, at least in terms of controlling the temple.
We began to look for answers beyond the physical realm. We actively cultivated meditative states, in which the secrets of the divine realm were revealed to us. We became consumed with the end of days, with an eschatological hope that all will be put right in the end, that a legitimate priesthood will at last be established by divine intervention. That is why we Zadokites threw in with the Essenes. That is why I rose up to lead the movement. The scrolls we composed tell it all.
But with those who remained steadfast in God's precepts, with those who were left from among them, God established his covenant with Israel forever, revealing to them hidden matters in which all Israel had gone astray. His holy Sabbaths and his glorious feasts, his just stipulations and his truthful paths, and the wishes of his will which man must do in order to live by them. He disclosed these matters to them, and they dug a well of plentiful water, and whoever spurns them shall not live. But they had defiled themselves with human sin and unclean paths, and they had said, "For this is ours." But God, in his wonderful mysteries, atoned for their failings and pardoned their sins. And he built for them a safe home in Israel, such as there has not been since ancient times, not even till now. Those who remained steadfast in it will acquire eternal life, and all the glory of Adam is for them. As God established for them by means of Ezekiel the prophet, saying,
"The priests and the Levites and the sons of Zadok who maintained the service of my temple when the children of Israel strayed far away from me, shall offer the fat and the blood."
The priests are the converts of Israel who left the land of Judah, and the Levites are those who joined them, and the sons of Zadok are the chosen of Israel, those called by name, who stood up at the end of days.
And so it was that the Essene Enochians slowly began to transition from an anti-Zadokite to a Zadokite group, who referred to themselves not only as the sons of Tzadok, but as the sons of light.
The great question that lay before us now was what to do next. Should the Essene Enochian movement try to influence the new Hasmonean leadership? Should we try to win them over? Try to regain control of the temple and the sacrificial system? Or was it time for a complete break from the rest of the people? For recognizing that we alone are the sons of light? Many Enochians resisted those of us who represented a more radical opposition. Rival groups and sects rose up, people we refer to as arrogant men in Jerusalem and seekers after smooth things.
It's hard to know in hindsight who exactly these arrogant men in Jerusalem were, but it appears that the seekers of smooth things, also referred to in the Dead Sea Scrolls as the House of Ephraim, were a new party who came to be called the Pharisees.
Now for the Pharisees, they live simply and despise delicacies in diet, and they follow the principles of reason, and what reason prescribes to them as good, they do, and they think they should earnestly strive to observe reason's dictates. They also pay respect to those who are advanced in years, nor are they so bold as to contradict them in anything which they have introduced. And when they determine that all things are done by fate, they do not take away the freedom of those who act as they think fit, since their notion is that it has pleased God to create a temperament whereby what he wills is done, but also that man by his own will may act virtuously or viciously. They also believe that souls have an immortal vigor in them, and that under the earth there will be rewards or punishments, according to whether they have lived virtuously or viciously, and the latter are to be detained in an everlasting prison, but the former will have power to revive and live again. On account of these doctrines, they are able greatly to persuade the body of the people, so that divine worship, prayers, and sacrifices are performed according to their direction. Therefore, the cities esteem them greatly, on account of their virtuous conduct, in their actions and their discourses as well.
We care not for these seekers of smooth things, for even though we accept their belief in the resurrection of the dead, we cannot accept their quest for favor among men, when the approval of God is all that matters. They, who pride themselves on being moderate in judgment and flexible in how they interpret the laws of our fathers, have sought an easy path and a smooth way. Then there is the house of Peleg, whom we also refer to as Manasseh. It is true that they share our view regarding the contamination of the holy house, the temple, but I have called them out for being far too willing to compromise on matters important to the faith.
The terms Manasseh and House of Peleg appear frequently in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they seem to reference the powerful sect in Second Temple Judaism called the Sadducees.
But the doctrine of the Sadducees is this, that souls die with the bodies, nor do they value the observation of anything besides what the law requires of them, for they think it a matter of virtue to dispute with those teachers of philosophy with whom they frequently consult. But this doctrine is received only by a few, yet by those still of the greatest dignity. However, they are able to do almost nothing by themselves. For when they become judges, as they are unwillingly and sometimes forced to do, they adhere to the notions of the Pharisees, because the multitude would not otherwise accept them.
Increasingly, we Essenes came to embrace the doctrine that souls are predestined to be good or evil from the beginning of time, a principle denied vehemently by the house of Peleg, that is, Manasseh.
The Sadducees take away fate entirely and suppose that God is not concerned with our actions, or with not doing what is evil, and they say that to do what is good, or what is evil, is a matter of choice, and that doing one or the other belongs to every one, that they may do as they please. They also take away the belief in the immortality of the soul, and the punishments and rewards in Hades.
At some point during the tumultuous times of the Maccabean revolt and subsequent Hasmonean dynasty, the Essene Enochian movement began to show signs of splintering into subsects. There are cryptic messages in the Dead Sea Scrolls that identify so-called traitors, including someone called the Scoffer and the Preacher of Lies, who broke away from the teacher's movement at an early stage and continued to trouble the sons of light.
And God observed their deeds, that they sought him with a whole heart, and he raised for them a teacher of righteousness to guide them in the way of his heart. And he made known to the latter generations that which God had done to the latter generation, the congregation of traitors, to those who departed from the way. This was the time of which it is written, like a stubborn heifer, thus was Israel stubborn, when the scoffer arose who shed over Israel the waters of lies. He caused them to wander in a pathless wilderness, laying low the everlasting heights, abolishing the ways of righteousness, and removing the boundary with which the forefathers had marked out their inheritance, that he might call down on them the curses of his covenant and deliver them up to the avenging sword of the covenant. for they sought smooth things and preferred illusions, and they watched for breaks and chose the fair neck. And they justified the wicked and condemned the just, and they transgressed the covenant and violated the precept. They banded together against the life of the righteous, and loathed all who walked in perfection. They pursued them with the sword, and exulted in the strife of the people. And the anger of God was kindled against their congregation, so that he ravaged all their multitude, and their deeds were defilement before him.
Traitors, the scoffer, the waters of lies, all mysterious terms which need a good deal more investigation. And who is pursuing whom with the sword? Scholars have been puzzling over such language ever since the Dead Sea Scrolls were first uncovered in the middle of the 20th century. And while the answers remain elusive, one thing is certain: there's so much more to come.